that illegally crossed Algerian territorial waters in the evening of Tuesday. And the Speaker of the People's National Assembly, Brahim Boughali, has said that the initiative of President Abdelmadjid Tebboune with regard to the crisis in Niger goes in line with Algeria's unswerving conviction of the importance of peaceful solutions through dialogue. And in Gabon, General Brice Clotaire Oligui Nguema has pledged to set up democratic institutions and to organize transparent and free elections less than 1 week after the takeover that ended President Bongo's 55-year-long rule. And those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune has offered his condolences to the families of the victims of the floods that hit the provinces of Tlemcen and Al Bayed. The floods were the outcome of huge rains that caused human and material losses. And the Ministry of National Defense has provided details on the case of the 3 jet skis that illegally crossed Algerian territorial waters in the evening of Tuesday. The Algerian Defense Ministry said that during a security and control patrol at the Algerian territorial waters, a unit of the Coast Guard intercepted 3 jet skis having illegally crossed the Algerian territorial waters. After giving an acoustic warning and ordering them to stop several times, the concerned jet skiers refused to comply and fled while carrying out dangerous maneuvers. The statement added that given that this maritime border records an increased activity of drug trafficking and organized crime, the staff of the Coast Guard fired warning shots due to the obstinacy of jet skiers. After several attempts, shots were fired, forcing one of the jet skis to stop while the 2 others fled. During another patrol of the Coast Guard on Wednesday, an unidentified male body with a hole of a firearm bullet was recovered. The body was then transferred to the morgue of the Marsa Ben Mhidi Polyclinic in Tlemcen province. In this line, the National Defense Ministry calls on the various national media, social media users and all citizens not to pay attention to false information aimed at harming the honorable image of the National People's Army. The Speaker of the People's National Assembly, Brahim Boughali, has said that the initiative of President Abdelmadjid Tebboune with regard to the crisis in Niger goes in line with Algeria's unswerving conviction of the importance of peaceful solutions through dialogue. At the opening ceremony of the 2023-2024 Ordinary Parliamentary Session, Brahim Boughali highlighted the importance of providing internal national cohesion of the states away from foreign interference. He added that Algeria's political awareness made of her pivotal country that has regional and international influence. Meanwhile, the Speaker of the Council of the Nation, Salah Goujil, shed light on the importance of strengthening Algeria's internal front to fight against her external enemies. He also praised the 54 commitments of President Abdelmadjid Tebboune, based on which the President extended his hand to the people to build a new Algeria. He said the major implemented commitments of the President was the constitutional amendment to prevail democratic practices and freedom of expression while keeping the socialist character of the Algerian state. The Council of the Nation, let's recall that it has opened its plenary session under the chairmanship of Salah Goujil. The opening ceremony was attended by Prime Minister Ayman Ben Abdelrahman, the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Brahim Boughali, as well as other government members. The opening of the session comes in accordance with the provisions of Article 138 of the Constitution and Article 5 of Organic Law 1612 of August 25, 2016, defining the organization and functioning of the National People's Assembly and the Council of the Nation, as well as the functional relations between the 2 chambers of Parliament and the government. The President of the High Authority of Transparency, Prevention and Fight Against Corruption, Salima Mousserati, is taking part in the 14th UN Convention session against corruption in Vienna. The Algerian official will also participate in the Intergovernmental Experts meeting for the reinforcement of international cooperation as part of the UN Convention session. She is also expected to make a presentation on the efforts made by Algeria for the reinforcement of international cooperation, as well as Algeria's commitment to implementing the convention, notably through the launching of its first national strategy of prevention and fight against corruption. Let's know that the 14th UN Convention session against corruption will last until September 8 in Vienna. 14 hours, 35 minutes, Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. And President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has appointed Mohamed Lagab as Minister of Communication. The appointment of the new communication minister came in line with Article 91 and 104 of the Constitution and following consultation with the Prime Minister. And in Libya, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Aguila Salah, has met with a special representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations and head of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya, Abdoulaye Batili. During their meeting in the city of Al-Quba, Aguila Salah discussed with Batili the latest developments in the political situation in Libya, especially the efforts made to hold presidential and parliamentary elections, notably the findings of the Joint Committee 6+6 for preparing electoral laws. The Speaker of the House of Representatives stressed the need to form a unified government in the country whose primary mission is to hold elections. The UN Special Representative for his part explained that more efforts and consultations must be made to achieve the electoral entitlement in response to the desire of the Libyan people. And still in Libya, the High Council of State demanded to expedite the publication of the details of the investigations on the issues of communication or the issue of communication with the Zionist entity and the condemnation of the personalities involved in the case. The Libyan High Council of State held a consultative session in Tripoli, attended by 48 members to discuss the repercussions of the Minister of Foreign Affairs meeting with the Zionist entity's foreign minister. During the session, the Council condemned any contacts with the Zionist entity at any level, emphasizing the national constants and criminalizing contacts according to the laws in force. The head of the National Unity Government had suspended Minister Al-Mangoush from work and formed a committee headed by Minister of Justice Halima Al-Busayfi to investigate the incident and to submit its report to the head of government within 3 days. 14 hours, 37 minutes, Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. And in Gabon, General Brice Clotaire Oligui Nguema has pledged to set up democratic institutions and to organize transparent and free elections less than 1 week after the takeover that ended President Bongo's 55-year-long rule. In a speech made during his swearing-in as president of the transition, he committed himself to amnesty all prisoners of conscience and to safeguard the democratic gains. Gabon's new leader also pledged to facilitate the return home of all exiled and to fight, as he put it, the massive corruption and bad governance affecting the country. Gabon's new leader said he was astonished by the international institutions' condemnation of the coup, affirming that the military's action was aimed at avoiding a bloodshed. General Nguema seized the power on August 30th, less than 1 hour after the official results of the presidential elections confirmed the victory of President Bongo. The military takeover was condemned by the UN, the AU, Germany, the United Kingdom, as well as by the US and the EU, which also stressed that the elections were marred by irregularities. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. The United Nations says it is in need of $1 billion to provide aid to the 1.8 million people fleeing the conflict in Sudan. The UN High Commission for Refugees said the crisis besetting Sudan triggered off an urgent demand for humanitarian aid as those who sought refuge in the isolated border regions facing a desperate situation on account of insufficient infrastructure. It urged the donor countries to provide support to back the efforts deployed by the UN and its partners in the country in order to meet the basic needs of the refugees, including water, food and shelters. The AHRC stressed that the international community must show solidarity with the host government and communities, including Chad, Ethiopia, Egypt and South Sudan, which are already sheltering hundreds of thousands of displaced. This came as the head of the Sudanese army, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan today arrived in South Sudan to discuss Sudan's crisis with President Salva Kiir. Meanwhile, in Sudan itself, fighting continued unabated between the government and the rapid support paramilitary forces in various areas, including Khartoum and Omdurman. According to the UN, the fighting raging in Sudan since last April has claimed over 5,000 lives and caused the displacement of 4.8 million people. 14 hours, 40 minutes, Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. 6 Palestinians were wounded in an attack launched today by the Israeli army against the refugee camps of Jenin in the West Bank. Local sources said 3 other Palestinians were arrested by the Israeli forces. And the International Atomic Energy Agency has deplored the lack of cooperation of Iran, particularly regarding the reinstallation of surveillance cameras in certain nuclear facilities. The Director General of the UN body deplored the fact that no progress has been made in this regard. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has met today in the resort town of Sochi on the Black Sea his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, devoted to the accord on the exports of Ukrainian cereals. The Turkish president said that he expected today's meeting to culminate in a major announcement for the world and for particularly the African developing countries. The meeting focused on a possible resumption of the accord as seen as vital for the world food supply and from which Russia withdrew last July. The accord reached in 2022 as part of a mediation undertaken by Turkey and the UN was aimed at ensuring the protection of Ukraine's cereal exports via the Ukrainian ports on the Black Sea. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, 14 hours 42 minutes Algiers time. And the proceedings of the first African Climate Summit have kicked off in Nairobi, Kenya, an event that will serve as platform for African countries to address the critical issues of climate change. In his opening speech, Kenyan President William Samoei Ruto, chairman of the Committee of Heads of State and Government of the African Union on Climate Change, called for making of Africa an emerging power in green growth. The Minister of Environment and Renewable Energies, Fazia Dahlab, is representing the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, at the first African Summit meeting on climate. Addressing the preparatory meeting last July, she stressed the importance of placing the African continent in the heart of the problematic of climate financing in Africa. 14 hours, 43 minutes, Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and time now for the headlines. The Ministry of National Defense has provided details on the case of the 3 jet skis that illegally crossed Algerian territorial waters in the evening of Tuesday. And the Speaker of the People's National Assembly, Brahim Boghali, has said that the initiative of President Abdelmajid Tebboune with regards to the crisis in Niger goes in line with Algeria's unswerving conviction of the importance of peaceful solutions through dialogue. And in Gabon, General Brice Clotaire Oligui Nguema has pledged to set up democratic institutions and to organize transparent and free elections less than 1 week after the takeover that ended President Bongo's 55-year-long rule. And those were the major developments, and this is the end of our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to our economic program presented by Said Bouazi.
Hi and welcome to our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. First in the news, the Minister of Vocational Training and Education, Yassine Merabi, has said that the sector is working to train a skilled workforce that meets the requirements of the national economy, highlighting the sector's role and its efforts to live up to the ambitions of the country. In a statement to the press on the sidelines of the closing of the summer vocational training camps, the minister also pointed out that all the means have been mobilized and all measures have been taken in anticipation of the forthcoming professional year, referring to the new specialities planned, including seawater desalination, the green economy and the railway sector. The Minister of Health, Abdelhak Saihi, has received the Belgian ambassador to Algiers, Alain Leroy, with whom he discussed ways of strengthening cooperation between the two countries, according to a press release from the ministry. Talks also focused on various aspects of bilateral cooperation and opportunities for developing existing partnerships in the field of health through the exchange of expertise, transfer of technology and knowledge, training and twinning. The Minister of Transport, Youssef Sherfa, has announced that development work at the metro stations of Algiers as part of the extension of its network on the El Harraj Houari Boumediene Airport and Ain Naja Berraqi lines, as well as the equipment of the tunnel and the laying of the rails on the same route, will be launched before the end of the year. Speaking at the press briefing, Youssef Sherfa said that the civil works of the first line, which extends over 9.5 kilometers and has 9 stations, and those of the second, a linear of 6 kilometers and totaling 6 stations, are almost completed. More in our program. The National Company of Electronic Industries, ENI, in Sidi Bel Abbas, has just signed an agreement with the Company of Bank Services, SSB, for the manufacturing of 20,000 electronic payment terminals, said the Managing Director of ENI, Baya Kendil. She said in a statement to APS that the manufacture of this quantity of electronic payment terminals will begin next September, mentioning in this respect the completion of a project with Naftal for the production of fixed electronic payment equipment, which will be placed at petrol stations. The Regional Mutual Agricultural Fund, CRMA, recorded an increase in turnover of 3% to 13.06 billion dinars in 2022, compared with 12.6 billion dinars in the previous financial year, the company points out in its annual report. This increase is due, among other things, to the signing of several insurance contracts and agreements with private individuals and professionals, as well as the various awareness-raising campaigns carried out by CNMA and its network aimed at farmers and industrialists, explains CNMA on its website. The Minister of Industry and Pharmaceutical Production, Ali Aoun, has called on private investors in the province of El Bouaghi to increase the production of pharmaceutical products in order to reduce the import bill. Presiding over the inauguration of a medical reagents production plant in Ain Mlila municipality, the minister urged the managers of this production unit to move towards a 3/8 production system in order to increase production capacity and contribute to self-sufficiency. And to wind up our program, more than 26 million seedlings have been planted in the green dam zones as part of the current 2020-2023 program, according to the latest assessment announced by a manager at the Directorate General for Forests. These plantations cover an area of 43,558 hectares. Saliha Furtas, Director of Desertification Control and the Green Dam at the DGF, told APS. According to her, the choice of planting areas and species is based on ecological criteria, but there are also economic and social considerations. And with this, we come to the end of our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. Goodbye.